introduce myself. My name is Manoj Agarwal. I'm the editor, founder of Banking Frontiers, a magazine that we started in 2002, and have been having a lovely time with the BFSI sector, considering how dynamic the sector is, and also considering the kind of response we got from the sector, because we are not at Times of India or CNBC or something. But I think the focused quality work that we do is something that the industry appreciated. So that's about me. I'm glad to welcome all of you. And if I can add my perspective, it's Japanese and Silicon Valley and a lot of Indian talent as well. And I think that's true for almost every major IT company in the world. So we don't want to just talk technology and business. We also want to bring the personal angle, because your personal journey is going to play a big role, and each one's in the organization will play a role in the evolution of an organization. Human beings are not robots. Essentially, that's what I'm saying. That's a little bit of that personal angle makes a difference. So if I may say, from my personal angle, data is something that I've always valued from the very beginning, whether it's a small Excel sheet, whether it's an article I have written. So I have almost all the copies of Banking Frontiers that have been published, physical copies and digital copies. So there's a personal attachment to data that one produces. But mind you, while I am the editor of the magazine, most of the content has come from people like you. The magazine is not about authors, it's about journalists going and interviewing experts in the field. So that's precious for me, because it is an interaction between me and my team and the world of experts out there. That's the value I see in data.
Yeah, good morning guys. I hope you guys can hear me. So I'm Prashant, co-founder of Credresolve. So we are a new generational debt collection platform. So omni-channel AI powered. And as Manoj, so for me, data I feel it's like a treasure which has revolutionized our lives a lot. For the past 1 decade. So data, I think it's a very precious thing, and also it's a very it's a dangerous thing. If it gets into wrong hands. So I feel it is two-edged sword. So that is my perspective.
Sounds good, Prashant. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Abhilash. I head the tech and digital native business for QK Tech. We are a AI native quality engineering and reliability engineering company. Predominantly are working with a lot of BFSI organizations. We are also based out of Mumbai.
Yes.
But so the way we look at what's happening in the world right now is, in order for banks are pushing towards AI adoption, which means everybody are getting into cloud, which means the data is most of the work is happening as of today. And for AI to sort of spread and grow, we're closely working with a lot of BFSI organizations to understand data. I mean, we are all, at least for me, it started with everything from data to be able to drive my journey of my work itself. I started at the age of 14, so at my dropout too. So everything started from there. For me, it's like the bread and butter for everything that I do today, from business to solving problems to AI, and that's how I see it. And it's a very interesting space with what's happening in at least the data world for AI, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Thank you. So data is your
Thank you.
oxygen.
Yeah,
It's a treasure, it's an oxygen. Let's see what Roshni has to say.
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Roshni Reddy. I'm representing Dwara Holdings today. I lead product for Dwara Holdings portfolio companies. So for those of you who aren't aware, Dwara Holdings is a financial inclusion fund cum venture studio, and we incubate startups that are working specifically on inclusion problems across different communities in the country. So my journey with data. So prior to Dwara Holdings, I've been part of digital banks side of India. So core digital banks in the UK. I've also been part of fintechs, global fintechs and regional fintechs like Grab Financial Group in Singapore. And their data really is the soul of everything we do, right? So if you think of business as the mind and technology as the heart, data is actually the soul. Without data, neither works. But what I have come to realize of within a short time that I've been with Dwara Holdings is that when you put your inclusion hat on, when you're talking about people who don't have access to a lot of things we take for granted, we can't solely rely on data. So there has to be that human touch that continues to play a big role in the decisions we make. The human touch, the human, I guess, aspects. So that's my fear a little bit, that we lose ourselves as humans in this whole, data play. But yeah, that's just my two
Sounds good.
cents.
If we are conscious, then we will not lose. That's my perspective. We have to be conscious that we are humans and not robots. Please.
Hey guys, myself Linjin. I am representing Chaitanya as well as Swatandra Finance. So it is actually combined entity. So I am CTO out there. So regarding data, I think we doesn't have to speak much because it is an oil or lake. We can say anything. Some people started seeing it as an oil. Now it became a lake. So earlier we had to transfer just like coconut. We had to transfer coconut to the oil factory to churn it out. Now it is other way. It has become a lake. Now we are actually getting into lake and extract the stuffs. Only thing is what we extract, it depends upon it, and how we extract it depends upon it. Anything, the models, which there is one of the point out here in the artificial intelligence, the extraction and the outcome of the thing depends upon the quality of the data and how you are actually reaping the benefit out of it.
Yeah, hi. I'm Aditya. I'm from Mpocket. Prior to this, I was with companies like Paytm Money, ClearTax, and IND Money. At IND Money, I led US stocks product and business into product primarily. Got fortunate enough to see the fintech journey of India, right from the days of Paytm, and with all of that excitement stayed with us. So currently at Mpocket, I lead finance products over here. So, and my obsession with like fintech or any related this industry is the excitement with data, right? And that data powered decision making, right? That changes, that molds companies, right? And if wrong, we have seen companies go bad as well, right? So data, I believe, is like the oxygen, at least for this sector. I truly believe so. And yes, like folks have pointed out, it has to be, taken along with human elements as well.
Hi everyone, this is Manoj. I have little more than 2 decades of experience in the data space. Recently I was with Paytm, so I left them. I'm in the process of doing what I want to do next. So data has been my career ever since I started. So I had the opportunity to look at the data in a different shapes. For example, variety, velocity, and the volumes. Was lucky enough to see that on Amazon, Yahoo, Paytm, Razorpay, and a few more different organizations. What I've seen with data is that the kind of technology, the tools, the approaches, some of them remains similar. I mean, approaches remain the same, that you basically divide and conquer. But the tools which are coming, which basically came in last 10 to 15 years, like big data, then AI, right now Gen AI, it's changing pretty fast. And how companies are basically driving value out of it, right?
Hi, this is Timan Gowda from Watts Loan. I've been a banker 20 years with Axis Bank. I've handled huge data, very high risk data, technology and risk. My first journey with the data, it was when my date of birth was written as 0106. And then, best to get me out of the house 2 years early, my father had written something and pushed me to the school. Then later I realized I was 10th July, 2 years younger. And I cleaned up 2 years back just to file my IT returns. And I'm using that problem of Bharat to clean up the data, starting with the date of birth. It's a data of birth, not date of birth.
Yes.
And the name match is a huge problem that we are solving today. I'll talk along when we are addressing the agri challenge in India, agri finance.
Yep, that's the side of data that because it was not such a critical issue in earlier times, it's become an issue like the Y2K problem. Yes, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I am Akshay Sathe from Toyota Finance. I handle the operational risk. And see, data is very important. Data and risk go hand in hand. That is what I have been observing since last 1 decade. And the authenticity of the data, not having a data is a risk. Having the wrong data is a bigger risk. And without data these days, you cannot even take decisions. So that's why I believe data is like a gold mine. It is for small decisions to bigger decisions. Data is relied upon by all teams across the company and even across
In
the
your
industry.
personal journey with data or any personal story?
Yeah, like for even if we have to take an admission in a college, data is important. Then you have to invest, personally, data is important. Even, you have to go from one place to another, data is important.
Absolutely.
So, and so that's why data has become, I think, a very crucial thing.
Absolutely.
Personally also and professionally also these days.
Great. Thank you so much.
Myself, Abhinav Maheshwari. I am heading the IT applications in IFL Samasta Finance Limited. And I'm in the company from last 5 years, and I brought lot of digitization and everything in this loan, and we saw multiple impacts of COVID and other things. And being in the MFI sector, which is more on a rural and non-digital economy to shifting to digital economy. So yes, the topic today is on the data deluge, and data plays a vital role if you want to move from a non-digital to a digital thing. So I think
Okay.
I will take.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's move
Hi,
on.
good morning, everybody. My name is V. Vaidyanathan. I'm not that famous. Another one who is in the banking industry. I've been in the industry for close to 40 years. I just bumped on another V. Vaidyanathan, who is the more famous one, the IDFC CEO. And all the problems of IDFC come to my personal mails. I'm fighting that. So that data is another. So my journey started with data when I did the interest calculation in a bank in summer trainee. So the ledger which you are cranking all that. So to now, where as a banker, I would like to know a lot of information about the customer, and I don't want to share a lot of information as a customer because it's very risky. I mean, getting calls middle of the night about loans and all that is nonsensical. So it'd be risky to share data, but at the same time, as a other side of the fence, you'd like to know more about your customer.
Right.
So interesting to know what others have to say, but I'm a bit wary of sharing my personal data, but I'd like to have personal data as a banker or a vendor.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Abhijit Ray, co-founder of Unitas Capital, which is a boutique investment bank. Did 20,000 crores for the companies, and then I also set up you've seen Inclusive Credit, which is the NBFC where we lend to startups. We have 350 startup partners where we lend, and then we have fund also. Coming from Vedan sir is like 40 years. I'm 33 years into banking, and I think I'm from a stone age where I used to carry these heavy ledgers, write everything on paper, and then as sir said, balancing, somebody who used to balance the ledger at the end of the day was a big achievement, right sir? For me, and what Mr. Gowda said also, my son's, he's just in 12th. All of a sudden realized that his date of birth has been changed. His 4th July has become 7th April.
Oh.
And it's a nightmare to change this in the CBSE system. For the last 4 months I'm struggling. So that's the challenge of data. And rightly so the date of birth issue. 47 or 74. And it's the US way of writing or the Indian way of writing. For me, who has written all the numbers, used to write 500, drafts in hand as a SBI professional. So from there to the journey today, I'm a bit scared, actually. To be frank, scared much more. I didn't use any banking app for just last 2 years I'm using it. I was so scared that so many things they take, and is it safe to use the phone? Because all the apps takes everything from me. They have my phone records, they have my SMS records. They say access to phone calls, what they are recording, whether I'm going to bed at what time. It's really scary. So I'm a bit scared. So I would love to learn a lot and see what are the key takeaways?
One more category, data.
Just to add this date of birth fiasco, I think I just after almost 30 years, I realized my date of birth is wrong because, the Hindu calendar and the English calendar, so 12th night, 1:43 a.m. is actually 13th. So, but you make a horoscope on 12th and 13th, it gives you a different journey altogether.
Which calendar you follow? That's interesting. That's interesting. Sudesh.
Right. Yeah, I am Sudesh. I'm the CTO of Credit Access Grameen, one of the largest microfinance. I have an interesting journey about data. So way back in 2002, we set up the first credit bureau in India. So I was the first CIO. And at that point in time, banks wanted to take decisions out of data, but the problem still remains the same, right? Data quality, right? Because it still fuels the machine learning models of today. But at that point in time, I have seen the data that used to get it from the banks to set up the bureau. I mean, the amount of time we spent in set of data quality assessments, it's really funny. I think you might need to put that out of record because I'll be sharing a lot of good experiences with all of you.
Okay.
So surprisingly, as you rightly said, right? A lot of times, basically people don't know their date of birth in rural India. So you know what used to happen? Yeah, so people used to, so the day they used to get into school, that was the date of birth. So we should see a lot of people 1st June, 1st May.
Yes, yes.
Right? So because that was, so if you remember, when we set up the bureau in 2002, we never had a name which was very structured. In South, you can have a lot of Kumars. In North, you can have a lot of Singhs. We don't have a structure of data as address, like you have a pin code. Village addresses are very different. It's next to a temple, next to the well, and that's it, district taluka.
Right.
So we had a lot of challenges. At that time, Mother also was not born. So people used to use different IDs. Rural India used to use voter ID because that's where most of the elections polls used to happen. Urban India used to use PAN. So again, no uniformity in terms of IDs, right? So a lot of challenges. Banks were not able to then look at a single view of the customer across products.
So we'll get
way
into
back
all
in
that
2002.
later. Right now
But
we're
interesting
just
thing, because what I was coming to is data quality is the most critical aspect then, and it still remains now from machine learning perspective. And when you look at data, it has its own story to say. So we might say a lot of things through our perceptions, but data has its own story to say, and that's why you should always rely on data to see what it really comes
what
out with.
story it is.
Yes, absolutely.
Data is a story.
That's my own learning, which I basically come through.
So myself, I am Palani Nama or Palani Balasubramaniam Nama. I head the technology for business operations for Mashreq Bank, and I also head the AIML COE, Center of Excellence for Mashreq Bank.
Okay.
So I almost resonate with every problem what you have said so far. Date of birth, 9th and 10th February. So born at 2 a.m. on 10th, 9th is my date of birth, and I didn't dare to change it. My record still has it 9th. Sometimes it's best unattended when things are going fine. So I think that's the policy, right? If something is working, don't break it, right? So that's where most of the IT guys would relate to it. And similarly, I mean, almost everything, right? So the address, what we were talking about. So I have my brother-in-law who says name and village name, that's it. So nothing more.
Name and village.
So now how do you know where your house is? He says, I know, everybody knows me in the village.
The postman knows everything.
Postman knows everything. So everything, right? So everything, whatever
Postman is a Google map of that
Google map of villages, right? So personally, I can relate to most of the things what you guys have spoken. So it happened. We are all in India, so problems are common. The problem domain is common for everyone. Professionally, what I'm dealing with today from the organization point of view. So predominantly, my first being, leading the ML journey for the bank. How to deal with the unstructured data. That's one of the primary challenge what I am having today, because when human is in the loop, obviously everybody has his own way of updating, the inferences, what they inferred in the historical data. So how do you really convert that into a consumable fuel?
Hey everyone, good morning. I'm Rudhav, I represent Decentro. So my journey with BFSI has been about 9 years now. worked with insurance domain, and also I worked with immutable ledgers when we talk about data. So that was between 2018 to 2019, where the primary challenge that I saw in India specifically was access to the data. When you have your claim to be processed, at that time, if you don't have access to the data, that is a higher challenge. Then since 2020, I've been with Decentro, where I see the volume of data is becoming a challenge now. And with AI, I would say the interface for getting the data is changing. It is being more and more flexible now. So, as an industry, I would say that we will have to learn how to handle this high velocity of unstructured data. So that is even the challenge that I see personally.
So my name is Sandeep Agarwal. I am 31 years in the industry, actually, primarily representing in the IT services sector. I was in Mindtree, then Happiest Minds, and now VisionNet. I'm a global CTO for VisionNet Systems here, primarily working with BFSI for long. My journey with data has been interesting. I think it's from birth, actually, being part of the Bania community. You basically start with a business mindset. Small grocery shop run by father. You have nothing to do but handle data. The number of SKU items that you have in your Kirana store and number of data points that you need to keep in mind. It started with all in mind, then went to calculators, then went to computers, then now mobiles, and I don't know what not. We'll have to handle it as the data progresses, actually. So that's interesting to see. But one thing I learned today as part of everybody's discussion is I think everybody who has date of birth problem looks like they have come to fintech or finance.
Good one. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thanks, Sandeep. Hi, Sharath here. Been a technologist for quite some time, been a technology entrepreneur, worked with large tech, and started my journey as an executive leader with Airtel Payments Bank. Been the CTO for some time and then moved to other roles. Right now, just recently moved out of Razorpay. Data is obviously everything for all of us, and I've seen that at Yahoo. I was at Google and Amazon, working with large amounts of data, using machine learning algorithms and others to take decisions. And then with Airtel, thanks to the Aadhaar and the JAM, we were able to leverage a lot of that and grew very fast. At Airtel, we acquired almost 100 million customers in about 4 years, thanks to a lot of the innovation that happened. Thankfully, some of the things that you talked about that the banking industry faced in the last, before Aadhaar and others, we did not have to face. But still, realize that handling data comes with a lot of responsibility. In the first year, we lost our license to Aadhaar and RBI because we handled data right, but we got a rap on the knuckle saying, you followed the regulations, but not in spirit, just on paper. And that's an important learning we've had in terms of understanding data, understanding compliance, regulation, and ensuring that we are always customer first. And the data belongs to the customers, and it is absolutely critical about how we treat data. And last thing, the way I see the journey is earlier we had applications generating data, collecting data, but now we're moving into an age where the data defines how behaviors of applications change. And that's a complete topsy-turvy of how we build and use data and applications. And I think that's exciting and also scary, but interesting times.
Yeah, that's a 180-degree turn. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Bharat. I am one of the co-founders of ViewNet Systems. ViewNet actually have built a business journey observability platform where we help our customers monitor their application, digital payment systems and infrastructure.
My name is Sanjay Agrawal and I manage the technology function as CTO in Hitachi Vantara and head the pre-sales function. I've been heading the SNIA board as well for some time and closely working with Manoj in social services like educating CIOs through various forums. Thank you.
Thank you.
And data and digital transformation is one of my core areas.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sujit Vijayan, part of Hitachi Vantara team. I'm from the technology side in terms of helping customers or articulating solutions for helping customers in addressing certain data challenges. And it starts from how do you store it, how do you protect it, enrich, and then how do you help customers to monetize that data, whatever they have in their enterprise. A quick one. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm Vijay Shivappa. I've been with Hitachi Vantara from a very long time now, and data has been one of the key foundation for any organization. I've been consultant to many banks on addressing this big challenge of data. Yeah. So probably Sudesh knows me from HDFC days.
So now we'll get into the discussion. Before we start, I want to throw a little bit of perspective that can help us guide in the discussion. So why do we go to office? Is the question that we all asked when we started working, whenever. So one went to an organization to work, essentially. So what an organization does is work. And then we get paid for that. Then so much automation has happened in the factory and in the office that work is not the main challenge. You don't say, I work today. You focus more on processes maybe or decisions. That became something that became more critical than just going to work, right? Further on, AI kind of things started coming in. A lot of vendors started coming in who would take over much of the processes and work. So what became important is not more important than the process is the capability, right? Makes sense? The organization must have the capability to do something. And then if you look at even one level higher, where does that capability come from? In most BFSI organizations, it comes from technology. If you have the technology, you have the capability. You can have people, you can have outsourcing, you can have consultants, whatever. But technology became the key. And that's why there are so many technology people here in this forum today. And can we think one level beyond that? And I would say data. Because without data, the technology is useless. Agreed? So at the highest level, I see data as the driver, as the core for an organization. So it's gone from work to process to capability to technology to data. And data takes decisions, data drives processes, data builds capabilities, data engages with customers, data helps you comply. And data is what drives so many things. Like I think one of you said, rather than software creating the data, it's now data that is changing the behavior of applications. So that was one kind of the bigger context I thought we could put in, so that when we do our discussion now, we can look at all these different perspectives, processes, work, capabilities, technologies, etc. The regulation was usually about money and making sure that money is handled properly, the way for society, for the country. But increasingly we are seeing a regulation around data. So as a regulated entity, what has been your experience on the impact of money related regulations vis-a-vis data related regulations? What are you using the same kind of thinking to handle both kinds of regulations? Or do you have a different way to think about those kind of handling those regulations, those compliance issues? Do you have different experts, different teams, different approaches, anything? Brief perspective on regulation from 2 or 3 people. Who would like to start? Bharat, please.
So I will just talk about the observability data or the transaction data. It seems when we are talking to customers, what we have realized is RBI has put up a guidelines in terms of they have to have this transaction data available for almost 7 years. And as we all know that the transaction is almost every month or every day it is increasing. So the amount of data the banks or any of these FS enterprises have to store and make available for any request which may come from RBI is becoming a huge challenge for most of our customers. So we have started looking at, can we divide this data into hot, warm, cold, and then coldest and very coldest sort of thing. So that depending upon the time or type of data and the time when the transaction has happened, you actually go ahead and be able to retrieve it to provide to satisfy the regulations part.
Interesting. 7 years.
Just to add to that,
And just transactional data, or?
So it is the transaction data, because somebody may actually come back after a year saying that, oh, this transaction I have never done.
Okay.
So what really happened? It had failed for me, but you are showing me a debit sort of thing.
Got it.
Just to add to that regulator angle of it, in my last role as the CIO of the bank, one of the problems, we started a bank, then within 2 months we acquired another bank which is in a suspended state, underwater and all that. The problem was when we wanted to move to a newer technology, and I wanted to close my DR, DC and all that and move to cloud. Then the RBI put in a foot and saying, critical data of the customer cannot be on cloud. So my question is, then what is critical data? I said, we don't know, you have to decide. So that's another problem with the regulator. They don't know what they want it now, and they want you to regulate it also. So that's another challenge, and the problem is structured data, unstructured data, critical data, what we define. Then once we define critical data, then RBI comes, no, this is not what critical. I said, why didn't you tell me before? So that's a challenge. And that I've faced it many a times. And on the lighter side of life, as a consultant, I've seen that this data can give you MIS, and most of the time, much before these CBS and all this technology happened, and it was just evolving. In one of my restructuring exercises, I said, in a particular bank where I was talking, I said, sorry, the MIS here is not management information system, it is management informant system. So it is based on gut feel, not on actual data. So that's on the lighter side of...
Okay. That's interesting. So what I take from your discussion is that the word critical is very subjective.
Yeah, it is very subjective. Yeah, I'll go with the consent. Consent is the base of the taking the data, right? So we've been, like last 2-3 years you are writing, last 1 year it's gone very hard on us through the bureaus, because we are not regulated, but we are regulated through the regulated entities or where we are accessing the bureau. Bureau was available as a B2B access only to the regulated entity. Around 2 years back we fought, about 4 or 5 years back we fought and took it as a B2C access in India. I was one of the first to receive that from Experian. But what we figured out, the RBI looks at consent differently. Here in India, when a lot of people are not very literate or illiterate, consent is just Under Contracts Act, what it says, a consent between the two adults who are for a transaction for consideration. And when the adult is given a consent, whether it's written or oral, heard, not heard is only under the Evidence Act. Like whether it's to be proved, that's why it should be written. Now we are facing a problem of when a farmer who is not literate comes to the bank, he says, can I take this? Yes. So he might put a thumb or he might sign. When I'm a B2C, I'm facing this problem. RBI is not able to understand that consent is there. An officer, responsible officer, taking it and keeping it on the record. By my system allows a digital marking of the consent. I built a system for that. I took an approval 2 years back. Now we are stuck. So I'm just saying we have to meet Bharat in the way it should be met. And we are talking about value of data and all that. Weakest is the strongest in a democratic country. Please understand, if he's illiterate and he's the weakest, even if he's a beggar of no value, he's the strongest in a democratic country. Don't touch him. You can't take it from him. You can defend with an urbanite or a very illiterate person. You can't defend what you've taken from somebody who's illiterate. So you will have to be very careful about how we are taking data, and how we are recording, how we are presenting. We are fighting it out. And I think some of the bureaus are represented. We might get an approval. We call it a physical consent, not a digital consent, because they say B2C, you have to have a digital consent. It has to have OTP based or a biometric based consent. We are struggling with that.
Thanks for that insight. Yes.
So when you're comparing with other regulations like money related, those money related regulations in banking is pretty, matured, be it frauds, money frauds, and it basically impacts a transaction. But data, if there's a breach of data, it really impacts in a big time, and it can have a long-term impact in a way that, you might just get closed down. So that's why the regulation is a very important aspect of it. Because today if you're saying the data you don't own the customer's data, you're just a custodian to the customer's data. So your responsibility of securing it's much higher than before. And this is through this data you're taking a lot of decisions, and hence this is getting monetized. So regulation becomes a very important part of it. And when you look at data, right, we talk about data as a new oil for growth, but this oil is really burning our pockets because we are just capturing a lot of data that we think we need. And that's why this particular law tells you to capture minimal data that is required for you, not just keep storing data endlessly, right? Because not only you end up spending money, but also you're putting the entire country to risk.
And there was one article I read recently about data sovereignty, which is becoming a bigger issue. Data produced in the country should remain within the country with certain controls. It's a subjective area.
I definitely want to add a little.
Yes, please.
I think I have a lot of respect for RBI as a regulator. I think the way they look at consumers and protecting consumer rights is extremely powerful, and I think that's something I have learned as a leader within my own experience. I believe that's the right way to look at. Earlier, maybe money was the biggest asset that customers had. We could not lose money, and possibly that's why a lot of money-related regulations were there. But now data is even more important than money, and rightly so. RBI and the other regulators are looking at controlling how that is used, and regulations there are extremely critical. Just to talk about the villagers or illiterates, just imagine as part of Airtel, I hope names will be taken out, but as part of Airtel, when we were growing, one of our biggest thing was the reach that we would get across India through the Airtel telco network as a bank, and be able to serve the financially unserved. A lot of them are illiterate. A lot of them do not understand what's really happening. And one of the reasons we lost our license way back, and all payment banks lost their license in 2017, was that we were getting Aadhaar authentications done. A user doesn't know why they're giving that. We have terms and conditions which our agents should show them, but they don't show. And the whole idea that a person who is coming to a bank has to understand why they're coming to the bank and how the data is going to be used and all is a big problem. A lot of the illiterate villagers and others do not have context at this point in time, and hence some of these regulations are extremely critical. And like I said earlier, we showed all regulations, reviewed all of them with all the regulators, including Aadhaar, UIDI and the RBI and others, showing every line item that was claimed that we were not following, and showed them no, we are actually following it, which came back as feedback saying, yes, you're following everything to the word, but the intent or the intent of the regulation and the spirit of regulation, you're not following. And that was a big learning for us. I think it's important for us to look at it in that sense.
So if I may summarize, what you're saying is the customer perspective of data
is the most important.
Is critical, not the, which is more critical than the tech perspective or the MIS perspective or the safety security perspective. The customer should be protected and should be informed and not. Fair enough. Abhijit, let's move on. There are 7-8 questions.
Yeah, I think I'll add a bit to what my friend said here. Is that we talked about code level data, but I think there's a tremendous level of change management we have to do for this, because this data-based, data-related regulation vis-a-vis the monetary regulation, what he said, that a lot of things are structured in monetary regulation, right? Your frauds and other things, a lot of things are structured. But think of the change in the entire IT policy to a smallest of the small things. Like we were using Gmail and into that ecosystem for donkey years. All of a sudden we realize, I think Microsoft is much more effective if you have to integrate multiple things, right? I mean, what is right and wrong is also an institutional perspective. But when we looked at going into detail, that of course the devil is in the detail, it's the governance structure actually we had to change. Completely coming from the board perspective, because as he rightly said that, banking and all, we have seen the monetary side of the regulation, right? But we have not seen this earlier. So it's also an evolving space. So the governance, it starts from there. And then as we go deeper, we find so many small things we need to do. So I think today the requirement for all the data-related regulations is, again, needing a different type of manpower and a mindset both. For the I would say not so tech focused institutions. Like if it's a technology company, it's different. But if you're coming from a financing side, you have to think a lot nowadays. To think of how do you address those from a governance to operational to the base level, all the structures. I think that is something also to be taken into account.
That sounds interesting, governance. I want to actually take that point to the Hitachi team. What do you see when you engage with customers or potential customers? Are they looking at governance kind of issues, or do they want to focus mainly on technology, or a mixture of both, or something else? What is your conversations like?
Very interesting conversation, and thanks for those points. There was an interesting panel discussion that I was participating in, and regulation, compliance, and governance was one of the key areas. And CIO said that eventually, with the kind of guidelines coming in from regulators, we might become or may have additional hat of chief compliance officer or regulatory officers. It's a fact. There was another interesting debate in that same discussion, same panel discussion, is so much of burden that we carry from a regulation, compliance, governance perspective, is it pulling us down and reducing the intensity in terms of innovation or not? And very interestingly, there was a very divided view. Some CIOs said that while these regulators are putting some discipline in the system, it's creating for us a good foundation for the data that is subsequently over a period of time helping us do better for the customers. So some very interesting things came in. Now from a CIO perspective and enterprise perspective, what changes in the approach all these are bringing is becoming very important. So every organization has a digital strategy, IT strategy, and eventually a data strategy. Within the data strategy, when they think of doing something that monetizes the data and brings the digital transformation, there is something very first broader blueprint known as data framework. Last few years, because of the regulatory things coming in, the regulation, the compliance, governance, the weightage of these in the data framework has gone up significantly. And at the bottom of all of these, we are seeing that since big data is coming in, which is in petabytes than terabytes, they need a technology framework, underlying technology framework that can manage most of the compliance, automatically scale as the business is scaling, data is scaling, and ensure some of the regulatory requirements like 7 years data retention. You talked about. And then you have hot, warm, and cold tier. And then you also have a lot of requirements wherein you need to access data in certain period of time. And some of the data may be on tapes, and tape may not be readable at the end of the day. What are those technology frameworks and platforms that will make it seamless, and you don't have to spend time to move the data tier, hot, warm, cold, and make the platform self-sufficient to manage the data, govern the data, and we can talk about that towards the end of that. So those are the things that are shaping up, keeping the regulatory, changes that are happening in the industry.
Okay, thank you. So one thing I can clearly see from the discussion that all of said, one is the macro view of data, 7 years of data or 14. For insurance, it might be even longer, 50 years. And other is that individual transaction data. Did I get the consent? Is the date of birth correct? Is the process being followed? Is the customer being informed? So from the micro to the tera and peta, there are data management, data governance challenges. Problem is for all the industry people that the regulator is not 100% clear what different terms mean. The government may change regulations and it's not a matter of efficiency. Technology was always a matter of efficiency to begin with. Can I do this faster, or can I handle more customers? But now, like technology officers are becoming compliance officers, whether they want it or not.
So Manojji, this data birth data discussion, 2-3 of you said that. Very interesting, and I'll add one more complexity to that, which I faced for last 4 years.
Oh.
When you change the date of birth in a system, And it happened, my wife's date of birth was wrong in one of the systems. Let me not name that, government systems. We corrected it. And it got corrected, new card got issued. But there's an equal importance to be given to all downstream applications that are dependent on the data. So while, let me be specific and off the record, it's a PAN card. She has a PAN card with right number and right date of birth. But when she uses the PAN card number for any kind of authentication, be it mutual fund registration, it declines, your date of birth is wrong. So it is 4 years we struggled. And so that's where the data governance is not only one-time activity, it needs to be a part of the throughout journey. I finished my home loan 10 years back, but every month I get a SMS, your EMI is due. For 10 years, I've... Sorry, I didn't. I said, I'm with you on this. Okay, I still get it.
I think there are going to be more data problem stories, but our focus is not to discuss the problem. Let's be clear. Our focus is to find ways to overcome those problems, solve those challenges.
I have an add-on question. I think a couple of you mentioned of using these strategies, right? Essentially, the question is stemming from, even though the unit cost of data is going down because of the exponential growth in the data that we are storing and with the users bringing in, and both of you, I think, alluded to, which is that cold, warm, etc., which all the orgs are doing, right? What are the tactics or strategies that specifically the orgs are using, right? Wanted to know more your views on that, right? So what do you define cold, hot, and how do you like retrade, etc., because you have models, etc., also you want to train, right? So what are these kind of couple of strategies? Yeah.
Okay, I can. I think short answer to that, one was from a cost perspective. Yes, these regulatory requirements are increasing the data footprint day in, day out. And that cannot be avoided, and it consumes a lot of infrastructure and hence the cost. While you don't have a control on these things, you have to find different technology ways to reduce the data footprint and hence the cost. There are 3-4 areas that are very active for the banks, and I'll share towards the end. What are these 3-4 areas that everybody is using to control the cost of the data? And we are pioneering in that, being, and creating a data foundation, so we'll share that. Second, from an AI/ML perspective, caring of the data, hot, cold, warm. I think the industry, from a platform perspective, from an AI perspective, from a data platform perspective, has become matured. It's able to see a single view of all of this data, be it a query or a data processing. There could be a little bit of latency when you pull the data out from a cold tier, but things have become very seamless from a technology standpoint, and it's not a roadblock at all. And we can again discuss that in detail.
Anyway, I will just blend with the things. So cost is going down. Okay, for example, the data component, you will see drastic reduction. Storage cost, yeah, it just 10 to 15% every year it keeps tipping down. One find it will be just like our SMS cost. But if you see the other side of the story, it is ballooning. There is a concentration of the data. The thing which we have to work out here is we have to segment the things. So there is something called as I will just add to here, low latency or no latency kind of a component. For some of the customer specific behavior, those you have to segregate and park it as a separate component. Exactly. So that is what I'm saying. So there is something called as a demographic. There is something called as a free state. So when you are actually designing a database or a data warehouse, it should not be one elephant sitting out there. You have to segregate even that part also. For example, in the CBS which we handle, we had to segregate that CBS database also into multiple components. For example, I'll just give a holistic example for a general people's point of view. Transactional data should be a separate database. Non-transactional data, something could be of structured or demographic, something could be of X kind of a category or Y kind of a category in this thing. So when the hit will happen, it is not going to actually all the thing. It will hit on that low latency plus concentrated hits, and you will have enough inputs to fine tune and give the clear output. End of the day, the benefit which you will have is you doesn't have to store the entire world of data. You will only store what is required. So that will actually give you have a lean and efficient model, even though data is ballooning, but one fine day it will get matured. That is how it will eventually evolve and help the people. Just a small.
Yeah, isn't that the same thing that we studied in college about cache and RAM and hard code?
Pure technology perspective, those
Hard code. That is coming into a
Same thing now in a bigger
Yes.
spinning media, all that tiers and hierarchies are built. Storage hierarchies.
So instead of one disk of data, now we're talking about enterprise-wide data.
Enterprise-wide data segregated into enterprise-wide concentrated form of engagement.
And is there technology to automate that, or you have to do it manually?
Yes, it is automation.
What?
Full automation, because you can't handle that by manually.
Which data sets are inactive, not being used for certain period, and that period you can define, push it down to a tier that is less expensive, and things like that.
And that's
So
what cache used to do, I think.
cache is in the forefront of the entire thing. That's the first.
Basically, transactional data separately and demographic data, your KYC data separately. I think on transactional data also, a lot of companies have started using a lot of data life cycle management tools.
Okay.
Which basically your transactional data also, right? For real-time compute, you might need just certain amount of data. Rest of the data can be parked somewhere else. That can be further archived and stored in cheap disk in the cloud. So multiple ways to do it. So data by itself. So data life cycle management has become a very important aspect of data governance, of making sure that you basically classify, store differently based on criticality, sensitivity, and
What is
performance.
the primary criteria for data lifecycle? What is the most important objective
So
that a
the
data lifecycle management
so the main
solution
objective
should
for
do?
data lifecycle is because of it addresses challenge of growing data. At the same time, you need to compute faster than before, right? If you have to compute faster than before, you need to store data in a different way. You need to store your high volume transactional data in a different way. Your data which is historic, you want to store it in a different manner, right? And this historic data might be further from a compliance regulatory point of view, since you need to store for 7 years, you would like to archive and store it in cheap disk. Then around this whole thing, all your demographic data, which is basically used for DDoP and others, they might not be having as many hits in a day. So you can store it in some other place. So this whole data is data design, data by design, and data life cycle has become a very critical aspect of life.
Can we touch upon the governance cost of data versus storage cost of data? Because what you have defined today, what most of you said is access-based optimization. To me, that sounds like cost angle. But what about the governance angle? How do you manage your whole data, and is the governance cost rising rapidly or linearly?
Yeah, I think that's something, even just taking the previous question, it's a good thing which we brought about the governance. I wanted to add governance to that.
Okay.
So certainly today, if you look at the primary principles which were driving the data governance before, they were very loosely coupled to the RBI or the regulatory thing. But now if you look at the way the SaaS and the PaaS platforms are evolving, the way your computation cost of your any RAG or Gen AI infrastructure is increasing, the banks are forced to use the commodity hardware which is hosted in OpenAI or any other third-party provider. So now the newer problem what we are facing today is how are you going to impose the data governance so that your PII data is not flowing into the external third-party services. So this has become one of the major,
So what's the solution?
So now coming to the solution part of it, the data governance itself has become a very dedicated discipline within the banks today. Previously, it was not the case. So it starts with the data classification based upon what is your P1, P2, P3 data, and this could include your customer data, transaction data, client information. So these classifications are not governed by regulators very strictly today.
Okay.
So the banks are taking the calls here, but they are very, very conservative calls. So which means bank doesn't want to end up pay fines over a period of time. So they are very, very conservative over there, and the new demand for the new utilities or new capabilities of data masking and of obfuscation of the data. So these things are becoming more and more prominent, and there is a good market for that going forward. So that itself will become another fintech division which would be providing these services. So this is something which is evolving, and now with the RAG and LLMs in market, this can be automated. So it's not like the old age where you need to pay tons of money to encrypt or not even encrypt, but to mask your data. So that itself is a algorithm which is being generated probably today by LLMs in a very vague manner, but going forward with agentic AIs, it's going to be something which is even more trustworthy. So that way, I think if you look at it holistically, where we stand today, it's in a transition phase. So there is a bit of higher cost today, but this cost will certainly go down as as your AI evolves, especially with the agentic AIs, which are very domain specific agentic AIs, another concept which is under the exploratory territory. So each of these things will become a domain, and the agentic AIs will learn from the World Wide Web data, and then they will evolve, and that's going to bring it down. And it's going to happen very fast.
I want to take this angle about governance from the fintech perspective, because your regulation is different from that of banks or the most regulated entities. What is your take on data governance from the point of view of optimization, cost, having a dedicated person or resource? Yes, Timaya. Okay, go ahead, Manoj.
So, from my experience, the technology is the solution to basically solve most of this problem. So, what is data governance? It's a rule how you want to store your data, reduce the cost, have better accessibility, and you can comply with all the governance that you have. So, these are the smart strategies that you put in place. When we talk about data lifecycle, what data would be accessed more frequently? What would be accessed for analytic use? What would be accessed for, let's say, your fraud ecosystem or for your, let's say, growth strategies? You build those systems accordingly. When I said that technology is the solution, for example, when you save data, how would you store? What kind of compression that you are using, right? When you're talking about caches, what kind of cache you're using? Are you using very costly vendor solution or using open source, which is cheaper, which is easily available, runs on commodity hardware, but it has a little lesser efficiency, right? So these are the things which comes into the picture, right? When you're deciding. For example, the one place where I built all the complete data platform using open source, our cost went down from, let's say, 100 to 10 rupees.
Okay.
I'm talking about the petabyte of system, right? And we use some compression from Snappy to G standard. Again, another 50% reduction. So the technology plays a larger role. What kind of system that you adopt? What kind of governance policy that you put in place? When it comes to PIA information, I don't think RAG and LLM is going to solve it. What is going to solve is it's the tokenization of it. The way you solve it for the credit card, there would be a single token which will define all your PIA attribute. Some companies have done it, but it's again an engineering effort. The problem with BFSI's place is that we're slow in engineering things. We basically adopt technology. We don't build solutions. That's what I've seen. This is my experience. Right?
Okay.
Because I interacted with PTM Bank as well, I saw that they want solution. They are not solving it, right? But the solutions are these. These are very simple. You build it in a smaller way that you can access. RAG and LLM is going to create huge amount of, not to mention data, but the cost as well. And again, the kind of gatekeeping that you have to do technically, again, it's a different challenge.
Okay.
But the next thing which is basically impact everybody, particularly BFSI, is that everybody would be onboarding the agentic AI ecosystem, the banks won't be. So it will create two different categories of technologies. One where with 100 people running the complete $500 million or $1 billion ecosystem, here you have thousands of people running the same similar kind of ecosystem. That's my take.
Data governance. So the trend that we're seeing, or from my experience, is that we used to have IT ops teams. Now we have ML ops teams. So ML ops teams, their core accountability is to look at the entire data lifecycle that a lot of us spoke about, and be accountable and set OKRs for themselves and measure themselves right from data preparation to data ingestion into models to data quality before and after it comes out of models. So that's how I think data governance in practice is what like I have seen. Data governance in frameworks is, all well and nice, but data governance in practice is what is key. And I think more and more tech first organizations are building those MLOps teams specifically for that.
Just want one clarification. That's a good point you made. Is data governance the primary objective for an ML ops team or secondary or tertiary?
That's a great question. That's a great question. The primary, in my view, the primary goal is data quality, right? Performance of the data, accuracy of the data or the model. That's primary. But then a consequence of that is good data governance, right? So that's how you look at it.
It weaves together. Okay. Sandeep and
So
Sumaya.
just to add to Roshni before I make my point, so MLOps is just one part of the data ops. So it's actually moving to data ops. From IT ops, it's moving to data ops, and MLOps is one element of data ops, right? Because there's multiple other. If you don't have the AI and MLs, then you have other things from a data ops perspective. So my point on the data governance is also that now the recent problems and challenges are not the information security but the disinformation security, right? Because that's where the AI is generating more noise, more content, more unneeded data, right? So you are creating 10 data, but you are now creating hundreds of data which are unused data, and everybody in the organization is bound to create data because of the Gen AI world that we are in, right? The content is getting created and created and created, right? So the major issue now going forward is going to be the data governance on disinformation security. Is how do you segregate this disinformation from the real information and then bring it to the fore? So whether it's ethical AI, responsible AI, or any other things that we are talking about, that's going to be a fundamental problem with the data governance.
Very good point. It kind of reminds me when the first thing you said, data is oxygen. So this is like pollution, which we are all grappling with, especially from Delhi. NCR has been famous in India for the pollution problem.
So we have carbon dioxide now coming in.
Carbon dioxide, nitrous, whatever.
Just a quick addition to some of this thing. Right? I think if you look at the evolution of systems, we initially had a lot of manual systems all across the organization. We replaced each manual system with possibly an application in independent silos which are working independently. Even now, if you look at it, most organizations have these silos. Data is not unified. The interpretation of data is not unified. The governance of data is not unified. There's still maybe a core banking solution doing some parts. There is a customer care system doing something else. There's a marketing system doing something else. Data is still not integrated. And I think with some of these improvements that are happening, we will see that we'll start looking at organizations looking at a single data store. If there is a customer, it is the same customer that any system is accessing. I think that's a very, very important business goal, to be able to deliver exceptional customer service with assurance. Regulations and other things also get simplified when you have some of these kind of setups. And I believe in the next 4 or 5 years with AI, simplifying the whole automation and other aspects, we will see data getting merged into single stores, distributed data lakes or data meshes, but the interpretation of data is going to be something, logically is going to be unified.
It's a very aspirational goal, is what I would
is,
like
it
to
is,
say.
I can just talk 1 minute about exactly this and the reason and probably how this data merging and unification can happen, right? Or the way I've seen it happen in the digital bank I worked for. So basically the change in technical architecture is what's going to drive this, right? So we were or still are as banks very monolithic in the way our systems and APIs operate. But moving to a microservices structure is the only way we'll be able to make data accessible and unified across these systems. And it's possible and it's happening. But I think the challenge is how do you change from a monolithic to a microservices versus build ground up from microservices first, which is also why fintechs have that edge a little bit, right?
So, but Roshni, on that point, right, microservices, it's a double-edged sword. If you look at it, it's not that microservice will help. Yeah, it is actually going to make even more silos. The question here is, how are you going to maintain the one single source of data, one single source of truth?
So I think that's the starting. I think
Let's not digress.
no. I think there's a starting point, but you have to make your data to have data pipelines that actually run from all of your microservices and come
I don't
into a
want to dishearten you guys. You are all aspirational, very good. In my 28 years of banking career, this is a problem which has always persisted, and I believe that it will be there until I retire, and it will be there forward that.
But I've seen it happening in.
Thank you for a very interesting topic for a new discussion. For a next discussion.
So let me ask a
Timaya
question.
wanted to say something, and
We have one question.
oh yes, Timaya, you wanted to say something. Asking for a while, and then Abhilash.
As a fintech, I'll give my perspective. When we are not regulated, we stay out of
That
regulation
was the question,
consciously. Because I don't want to apply for any license and be watched by anybody, but we work with the regulated entities or even bureaus who will give me only if I follow some rules. So am I a TSP? Am I a service provider? That is, has no regulation on me, I just give service, paid for it. If I'm a TSP, I'm carrying a platform, plugging in through microservices, on premises, on cloud. So then, am I a LSP? The latest definition, the RBI is trying to get the right definition. Loan service provider. Are you representing the bank? Are you representing the customer? If you are representing the customer, more responsibility on you because you originated, you met the customer first and took him to the bank. Till you hand over the customer to the bank, data is handed over to the bank, you are responsible. When you handed over certain data to the bank to take a decision, but you kept certain data to upsell and cross-sell, right? Again, you continue to have that responsibility. So it is very clear where are we. I've been walking this path last 5 years. I am figuring it out, and I'm listening to all of you, and it's very interesting. And we work on MongoDB, they work on NoSQL, Oracle, and MongoDB is great on reducing the latencies, but when it comes to their MIS requirements, querying, it fails, and we just have these problems. I'm just posing it to the experts here, saying that what fintechs are facing today, because we are cloud-born, and like hosted by MongoDB and cloud together, and happy to listen to more expert views.
Switch and ask, we have been speaking all inside out perspective. What are we doing internally to do all of the things that we are talking about? But what's the outside perspective, which is, I'm talking from purely from a user perspective. How are we building trust, right? With the data that we are collecting, what are we doing about it? Just because there are a lot of banks and interesting systems here. So I just want to understand what's the user perspective here, and what are we trying to do to build trust and bring that, more data, valuable data for us to make decisions.
Yeah, let's have one quick response to that.
See, the trust rates, it's a very interesting concept, right? So you invest in the stock market. Do you trust the stock market? Do you know what's happening inside? So it's the experience, what you give, what matters. So my bottom line is, trust is something which is deeper, which even customer doesn't understand whether he has to trust the bank or not. All he looks at is the experience. So recently I was actually talking to one of the taxi driver in Dubai, and when I said that I was working with Mashreq Bank, his first question is, oh, great bank. I said, why? Right? He said, I can open my account in less than 3 minutes. Right. That's the only thing. And does it matter? Yes, it matters. And he says, I haven't had a necessity to go to the bank in the last 3 years. Every service of my financial service is being met on my phone. It's a great bank. And no wonder you guys are the #1 digital banks for last 5 years, whatever. So all praises. But I know, we know the gaps, right? But we are still fighting very hard. Maybe better than the other banks. So very proud of being the leading bank on the digital frontier. But again, we have distance to cover. So now if you apply trust on that, knowing both inside and outside worlds, I know where it ends. But at the end of the day, what the customer really looks at is, he doesn't really understand how you are using his data. Or is there a risk with his data, what he's providing you? He only looks at what is the experience he is getting from you. So service. So most of the, not only BFSI, any other digital touch points for a customer or a user are focusing on the experience. We are investing heavily on the experience more than the trust itself. And that's where I think this entire discussion about data governance and bringing the quality services to the customer is very, very important. Very, very important. Because most of the times we don't get an opportunity to do this because there is ROI is very less on this.
Right.
So there is no evident, tangible ROI when you spend money on trust, building trust internally on the systems, right? So that's a very, very sensitive and interesting topic. And like you said, unless you have spirit, your CXO committee or your board members will not, doesn't want to spend money on it because it's always, what is the return on the investment for me, right? So all today, I mean, I'm just, being a bit open here. If I had to get an executive summary approval for a regulatory project, my mantra is it's regulatory. You can't deny. The moment you say that, they will keep all the, they know that there won't be any ROI. Even though there is the ROI, we don't even ask that, okay, I need to do it. That is because RBI is driving it. There is some, big boss sitting on top of it, right? So now that is the only fear is the one which drives data governance and data governance investments. But whereas the experience of the customer and the dollar returns or the euro returns or AED returns are the ones which will drive the investments on the experience part. Both are very different things.
So we have covered trust in a lot of discussions, panel discussions. I'll just summarize a couple of interesting points for the benefit of everyone. The customer is not a customer is not a customer. Every customer is different. A Gen Z is different from an older person. A male is different from a female. An educated, globally traveled customer is different from a villager or a less literate person. An older person may look at a well-known bank like SBI for trust. A Gen Z may probably not want to work with an SBI. So SBI, who will go there? I want to work with a Fintech or a bank tech or something, Similarly, for a rural person, is there a branch nearby? Is there a service point? It doesn't matter. Citibank is a great, I trust, because it's 1,000 kilometers away. So these are some kind of practical issues because the service distribution is not uniform. The accessibility, the products suite, it's all broken into different pieces. So what is accessible? What your peers are using. So for a lot of people, Gen Z and the older people, peers matter a lot. So I think a lot of trust at the subjective level comes from that factor, your peers and the accessibility and the customer experience like you have described. I want to move on. Is the topic of CapEx and OpEx something interesting to discuss in terms of data management? Enough of cost.
Perspective on, very traditionally banks have been storing data on premise. Now, it is moving to on cloud. So in terms of governance, how is bank looking at it? Like, is it like still sticking to on premise or, hybrid or planning to migrate?
So yeah, very good question. See, on cloud journey for me is a very close to heart journey because I was head of architecture, global strategy and architecture for Society General before I joined Mashrak Bank. So cloud was just, starting, they were scratching the surface. So we went to the European Central Bank and then we said that we want to migrate, not the storage, but compute, which is a less risky one, right? Compute to the cloud. So I will just cut the long story short. After multiple iterations with the meetings and all, finally they said, we don't understand the technology and we don't need to understand the technology. You have two options. You bring the top 10 players in Europe and all of you watch that this technology is safer. Right? I will allow you. Or you watch 80% of your operational expense as the security money with the central bank. Both are impossible. So we dropped and we have done a POC MVP for a Monte Carlo simulation on the risk assessment and given them the proof saying that it is secure. They didn't agree. From there we are here today where banks are storing majority of the data on cloud.
It's a cloud first.
Cloud first today. And it's a tremendous transformation which has happened. Cloud is no more an insecure medium. Banks are allowed, but even today there are few region constraints. For example, Bahrain, right? And Qatar, I think Qatar or Egypt, one of these things, they won't allow you to store on cloud. So there you are forced to do on in-prem. Or else majority of the things are on cloud, but there should be a very strong ring fencing for your data in cloud, right? So, and again, GDPR regulations will force you to have the data center in that particular country. So if you have the cloud data center in that particular region and your entire cloud infrastructure is ring fenced, you can always use cloud as good as on-prem, right? And these regional regulated, these things, constraints are the ones which would limit you. Apart from that, cloud is almost approved. And now it will become the necessity going forward, like I said, with your evolving technologies. So somebody has still an opinion that agentic AIs and LLMs are not there, but banks, I mean, we have been using agentic AIs already. It's already there. And these are for all the workflows. So I think maybe you need to change the, I mean, I know once upon a time we used to say banks are white elephants and they move slow, but no, banks have become the digital, frontiers. They are the people who are groundbreaking the digital things. So, okay, cloud is already, now it's cloud is part of this one. Yeah.
Cloud, if the core is connected to your lending system, for example, we do the lending system.
Yep.
They are not allowing the cloud, but it's a private vendor for
See, I agree. So today, I'll tell you something. Our core banking system is still on-prem.
Yes, but if it's connected to any.
So core banking system is always on-prem. So now why the reason? So there is two things, right? So would the regulator stop me from mushing my core banking to the cloud? No. In a way, I can put my flex system, in the cloud. Nobody stops me. But is the bank ready to do it? No. This is a precautionary measure from the bank side, not from the regulatory side. Regulator has already given you a free pass. Do whatever you want.
I think practically the way the banks are moving in India, they're using a hybrid approach.
Yes.
We're using a hybrid approach. The core critical sensitive data is on-prem. All analytical models run out of cloud. They tokenize it to ensure that data security and privacy is taken care of. Because I work with one of the largest banks. So all our analytical models we tokenize so that there is less risk of data, personal data getting.
That's more
the LOS and the LMS, which are the processing. We call them just processing engines. They're being hosted on premise.
On-prem. See, if some third-party guys comes to me, my first recommendation is host it on-prem. The reason is very simple for me, because if I had to host on cloud, I have to go through hazard checks and balances and approvals, internal approvals and external approvals. Just to minimize my headache, I will say put it on-prem. But if you say in principle, is it allowed to put on cloud? Yes. But my overhead, my extra time I need to spend, my time to market, all these things will get hit. They are more operational constraints.
From the seniors of the bank, GMs and above,
Yeah.
we are not allowed the RBI to put it on.
Can I just answer that in the...
If I may just add to this, I was in this quandary when we started. We were the last to get the license and start a bank, Unity Small Finance Bank, and we also acquired an existing SIC bank. So, as usual, RBI lands up 15 days after I join, telling them not to come, and they come and say, they look at my DC, which was underwater or on fire, whatever it is. And they come out with some 300 odd, shortcomings on that. And if I were to address that 300 odd shortcomings, it will take me another 3 years to set my bank right on the road. So one of the things that we did very clearly that, we closed the DCDR completely. We changed the existing CBS completely, washed it off. So na rahega baas, na bajegi bansuri. So
That's a good one.
we completely changed the very big name from a monolithic architecture to a microservices. We did a CBS transformation in flat 88 days from start to finish, which is fastest ever in the history of banking sector, which has never happened. We took a risk, but we did it. But then we did a smart thing. I said, it's like the Narakasur, you say it should not be sunny, it should not be rainy, it should not be inside the house. So we did one thing. He said, it's on-prem, but I don't own the DCDR. We outsourced it completely. The CBS was completely on a pay-per-use basis, and the rest of the stuff I put it on cloud. So next time they came with where are the answers to the 382? I said, there is nothing. So you go and do it again. So this is taking them time to again find out problems with that. So that's one, we avoided all those 380 odd points. So I think they keep saying that, your critical data, which I don't know what I want, I want it now. So I use the same. In consulting parlance, I have run across RFPs, which in simple line, 280 pages can be summarized as, I don't know what I want it now. So as a consultant, I'll always say, I don't know what I'm getting, but I'll give it to you now. So and they're very happy about it, because I'm talking the same language. So we avoided RBI's thing by completely closing the DC, DR, no problems, nothing, and putting it on entity, and we had a rack and all that. So the rest, what they could not answer, I put it on cloud. So.
And whole day I've seen discussions around data governance. I'll just summarize few of the things that I noted down. From a data and technology, data infrastructure, governance perspective, adoption of technologies that will shift the focus from data to data operations to data innovation would require a lot of technology changes, and things like automatic auto lifecycle management, for example, as the gentleman said, auto tiering, auto data integrity management, retention policy management, purging policy management, compression, when to do, how to do, and all of that to be done. Now, one of you said that the storage cost is coming down maybe per unit 10 to 15% a year, but your data is growing 50 to 60% a year. And then regulations are adding more copies of the data. Your data cost is increasing significantly. What are the few things that we are seeing in the market and we are also recommending is, one is a ADR technology, reduction of the data. There are reductions like 4:1 possible with the technologies that are available, and we guarantee that. With technologies like in-memory databases, especially in the ERP space like HANA, being shifted from earlier R3, core banking and UPI transactions, most of the banks, UPI stack, most of the banks have built around in-memory database stack. You don't need a lot of aggregated data any longer. And if you clean up that data, chances are your entire footprint may become just 50% or 40%. And then there are services to clean up that data. Third thing is, when unstructured comes into picture, a lot of data, rather file duplications are there. There is a data service available to clean up, and we have seen some of the banks, from 3 petabytes reducing to 500 terabyte on unstructured data from a big data perspective. So those are the technologies, and of course governance to have the less copies of the data as much as possible. There are banks have seen 13 to 14 copies at the end of the day making it, and when we did the audit, we found that half of them are not used at all. So less number of costs. All of these would reduce the data footprint, and at Hitachi we believe that sustainability is also very important, and the main contribution from a sustainability perspective is the data footprint. If it is high, you will not be able to meet sustainability goals. So we have some products, and I'll talk about that towards the end. Few problems that were got highlighted. AI, when data is not right, is creating noise, hallucination is coming. Interpretation of the data is taken differently, and hence different decisions are being made, as one of you said that. Data integration to have a single centralized view, otherwise inconsistent view would come in. And data on cloud is a challenge, because some of the banks may not agree to take the data on cloud. But within the same bank, the chief data officer or chief digital officer or chief AI officer say, I want to process bank's data on cloud because I have innovative tools there we don't have on-prem. Now, what could be one single answer to all these 5 questions? And if you see, for example, analysts are talking about just one line. You need to have data ready for AI. Till yesterday, before AI and Gen AI came into the picture, you had 10 things that you were doing from a data governance perspective. Continue to do that. But there are 7 to 8 new things that have come in. If you don't do it, 20% of success will come, 80% will not come. Just few top of the mind recalls. Synthetic data. Data masking is of course there. But if you are doing the processing, use synthetic data more often. That also helps you blindly take the data to the cloud and build up your models. So synthetic data is the most important thing. Biasing on the data, or rather unbiasing unbiased approach, very important. Try to have the data sets which are not biased. If you can't control the biasing for different reasons, then apply weightage to it so that biasing is addressed. Vector chunking, tokenization, context that your model can adopt. enrichment of the data, semantic of data, so that context is built as annotation of the data. So these are 7-8 things which can be done, and data governance can be streamlined and can be actually taken to the cloud, not the transactional data, but from a analytical and processing perspective.
So the last 5 or 6 things that you mentioned, does anyone want to dig deeper into that or have a question on that? There's one word new for me, vector something.
Vector chunking.
What
so
is
what
that?
happens is that I, as a human, if you throw me one slide, I can read and immediately act on it and interpret it. But if you throw a book on me and expect me to do something, I won't, because my brain is not ready to read hundreds of pages. Same cases with LLMs. It has a context window and size, so you can vector chunk it on sentences, pages, paragraphs, depending upon your
It's
complexity.
like tagging in the old concept actually, so you have a similar type of tagging so that you chunk the data.
So any point which needs more clarification?
Any point, otherwise I'm here around that.
How do you build a... In agri-finance, for example, we hit the road running, UAT, we don't get a use case to test, so we release it to production. Customers come who's illiterate, he's like, kya ho raha hai? He loses the trust on the digital bank, everything because of I'm trying something. So where I've been asking the bank, give me 100 synthetic data. Who creates this synthetic data? How do you
have to build it actually?
Yes. They're not willing to do
Mike, sir.
To my understanding,
You need a sample set to build
you need to have a good new authentic set of the data, and then using that data you can build a synthetic data which in no way will allow the customer's data or PIA data to be visible at all. It just picks up the patterns, trends, profile, and creates an artificial. So there are tools available, and that can be done. And AI, the analysts are saying build your AI strategy on synthetic data as much as possible.
So is it a good analogy to say that synthetic data starts with a seed, then you add fertilizer and water, then you get the bigger?
In a way, yes. If you have core data basis which you have built up the synthetic data, then on synthetic data you can build whatever you want to get better outcomes. However, certain things that I talked about, like enrichment, you will have to do it on the original data.
It's like a small data set converting into a large data set actually, but that small data set quality depends on what your large data set's quality is.
Absolutely.
So we basically have started using LLMs to do that.
Yes, there are
You
LLMs.
basically,
LLMs can do everything.
Yes.
so you give the key value field and field value restrictions like what that value could be, and then ask it to generate whatever number of rows you want to generate and use it.
But if the first set is wrong, it will generate all
Yeah,
rows.
obviously. I mean, that you have to know your data, right? I mean, that is what we have been discussing since morning.
I think his problem is different because his client has to give him the actual data set for which he doesn't have the access.
He'll get that sample data.
He will. His problem is
manually elsewhere.
Yeah.
But actually,
what
you
we
can.
are asking whether, we are working with RBI Innovation Hub. We are saying, sandboxes, give us one set of data, you tell us how do you want to camouflage it. Nobody is willing to give me 10 sets of data.
But why can't you go and get that data yourself?
With the end user.
I'm not supposed to do because I'm not the provider. No,
It's a survey, right?
I work for somebody. I don't have one data other than me. I'm a farmer also, so other than me, no, there is no data available.
That's the starting.
Even I have got my personal own things to protect, right? How do I surrender it to the bank?
This is a new aspect that there is no data. We talk of data deluge and there's someone facing a problem that the basic data is missing.
This is where some departments in the organizations are not on board. And that becomes another important activity for any AI and data journey, that all the stakeholders should come on board first, should understand the initiatives that you are taking, how it's going to translate the business, how it's going to have the digital concept coming into the picture. So onboarding, I would say, is a problem here, if I can.
And the main problem is, see, earlier the problem with AIML was large data sets was required to really get the accuracy on the models. That was the real problem, and you were struggling to get the large data sets. Now with the synthetic data, even with the small set, and if you can't have the small set, then means you don't know the business, right? Because small data sets can be created when you know the business. If you can create that small data set, now at least with LLMs, you don't have a problem of getting the large data sets which government only can provide. Small data set is not a problem at all actually. If you are in that business, you need to have that small data set which is the correct data, even manually fed. And with that small data, you should be able to create a large data set. With that, you can train your models, you can get to the accuracy, trial it, POC, do a POC and then take it. So that's how it's helping. Now for even people with no data sets, it was really helping now to really get them into the business.
We're working with the government also, various state governments. There are data sets like this PII data.
Yes.
And there is private permission data, that is PII data. There is public permission data, which is land data, which is freely available to anybody anywhere. Last 2 years, they've locked that also.
But that's large data set. That's what I'm talking about. That was the earlier problem. But you'll sample, it will be available. Sample will be available.
Anybody could query your land record, your house and all that before.
Yes.
Now, when I digitize and try to do something, whatever others were doing manually, and I automate it, they have a problem with that.
Okay, guys, lovely point that you've raised. In what ways is data management in an AI-driven ecosystem different from the traditional transactional ecosystem, multiple applications for serving different business needs? Because AI, that one AI seems to serve multiple business needs, including internal, including regulatory, including external. It's like a jack of all. So given that, what kind of architecture, what kind of data management to support that architecture do you see happening in the financial sector, and within the financial sector, different verticals, banks, insurance, NBFC, Fintech, all those. What is your personal perspective?
Yeah, I will just trigger some of the people's thought process. So just coming from the traditional as well as the Gen AI kind of thing. So if you see here, all our data sets were initially very structured. It was stored in a very structured base. Now currently if you talk about, you will see both structured as well as unstructured blend. So this is the blend which is happening out here. So how it works here is, in traditionally everything you have to define in a predefined format.
Yes.
There is nothing called format right now. Many people are already exploring MongoDB and everyone. And some of the CBS you will right now see, it is not actually running on a structured database. It is actually the blend of many things. So if an AI has to work, the same thing which he was saying, it has to get the right seed. The right seed requires the right kind of a data points, which doesn't have to have a one single kind of thing. Someone will be in the graphical forms. Some kind of the data will be in a structured. Something will be in an unstructured form also. So coming to these things, so these kind of a components, as well as there are many other algorithms which we actually build just to help you out. So as a random forest, in your case, agree. So all those kind of a models through which this AI will be actually, AI means I would say machine learning ka advanced terminology. So those models working on the structured, unstructured as well as the blended output is something over which this actually start working, and finally it actually seed out and conceptualize it into a different kind of form. So saying that, pehla ready-made structure tha, right now it is actually in any kind of form, random
almost random,
plus structured as well as seeded out form. So all these three kind of a form comes out, and that is how the things are evolving.
So let's look at it from managerial perspective. You define the operational perspective, but as a CIO or business head or something, how do you manage data so that you get the results you want?
It's a segmentation. So when you are the definition of the management here is what you want. For example, a business department, I will just state an example of the microfinance, because the entities are working. Mine is a microfinance entity. सबसे पहला चीज what we actually look is climate क्या होने वाला है. First thing, if you look in the micro environment for some villages, what will be the climate? Climate at the environment level as well as the political level also. If you ask me, okay. I'm just saying it, all those things, behavioral aspect as well as all those aspects. So all those data points on this and this kind of a scenario, as well as the kind of a customer. Example, in microfinance we have something called as a ringleaders kind of a concept. So that will add over that. Ringleaders means that word you can use, local, the landlady who is actually the big boss. Okay, who is actually taking. So those kind of things are actually the data sets which comes out, not in a structured manner, unstructured manner. Structured manner is all your data components which you are actually capturing. So it is the blend of all these. For business, it is those components which will work. Okay, in this geography, in this kind of a time environment, what this data has to derive, let it be. For a financial aspects, what is kind of a commonest, how much we will derive. So from the pool, how we are actually extracting the data, how we are actually converting it, what the logic we are defining based on the organization's requirement, that is something which should be available through the structured
So
approach.
you are saying, if I may summarize in one line, it is the business perspective of the data, the social, the weather, the political, whatever, which is the way you look at data management.
That is one aspect. For a tech, it is very different. For example, I am from the tech. So I will say whether my tech is compatible with that person from the data point of view.
Okay.
Example, Uber and Ola is very famous here. If you see any the person who is operating, they will say it's a more easy and amendable product.
Yes.
Why? Because they explored and created it looking from the same point of view. So for me, this actually tech. For some person, it will be from business. But how you are actually conceptualizing the outcome is something which a data analyst or data scientist is expert at doing.
So what the outcome required is, what is the key?
We should be able to do that, yes.
Sounds good, sounds good.
Let me bring the other point, right? What really changed from a traditional ecosystem to a AI-based ecosystem, right? The fundamental change that happened was from a batch-oriented system, it moved to a real-time system. That's the fundamental change, right?
Okay.
And if we understand that fundamental change, that was the need, why it went to a real time, right? We were doing banking before with a batch processing and with the rules-based system and policy-based systems and everything with a structured database. But with this fundamental change of real time, where we wanted to derive a customer experience, why 3 minutes KYC? Because it cannot be done in a batch. If you want to do it in batch, you have to do it end of the day. So you cannot do at 3 minutes KYC if you want to do a real-time credit scoring, real-time credit checking, real-time KYC and everything actually, and then get the particular banking account created. You cannot do that. So if the experience of the customer has to be changed, your customization and personalization is the driving factor, then the real-time was required. Now with that real-time, the challenges that real-time brought it was basically that you had to have a real-time mechanism to look at your data and do the analytics, do the insights, as well as look at the fraud and risk and compliance also at the same time.
Real time.
Now all this real time, both sides, right? One is the transaction, which is the good path of the particular stuff, and one is the risk that you have to look at the bad path of that particular stuff. Both resulted in driving the cloud base, because cloud really didn't brought a fundamental difference. It just allows you to have a high compute. It allowed you to have a high storage, a scalable architecture, which basically made this real-time decisions possible, which was never available in the traditional banking, core banking software needs. So when those things were available and those experiences changed the particular fact, that's where the AI-driven things are run. Now, because of that change, fundamentally the entire data lifecycle got changed. The data ingestion to data processing to data storage to data governance got through a change, because now real time anything can happen. I'm not doing a batch processing. The customer is getting it. If the transaction is getting it, the other guy is getting the money on his bank right now, not later. So you don't have time to catch that particular fraud later on, right? So those complexities really change the whole data management perspective. And now with the AI driven, the AI governance and problem with Gen AI, it's a real problem, is basically is going to add more chaos than actually solving the problem, is the more bad data that's going to be generated with the whole system, right? So all this fundamental changes has brought the data management changes.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for that. So essentially the real time aspect and now managing the disinformation aspect would be the next frontier. Yes, Bharat.
One of the thing when we say real time actually is actually not real time. It's a near real time.
Some seconds gap.
Yeah, there will always be gap. So it will always be a gap. See, one of the thing what we have realized when we collect this observability data, one of the thing most of our customer wants, which is basically looking at this customer experiences, right? And customer experiences are usually defined by two things: whether my transaction or request has success or failure. Second is how fast I am able to respond. Right? Now, with these two things, people are basically asking, can I use AI to go and start predict when my customer is going to have problems and when my systems are going to basically have these latency challenges and so on.
Yes.
But you look at the infrastructure today, the whole application ecosystem, the evaluation which you talked about from monolithic to microservices and serverless now, the whole system is so complex and there are so many variables to it. It's almost impossible to really go there where we can start predicting things very accurately. So one of the biggest challenge what we have been facing on bringing in the AI part to it is the data quality, which a lot of people talked about. And the data breadth sort of thing, right? That am I able to collect data from all the touch points which are really there?
Okay.
And then do certain things on top of this modeling and AI model, ML ops and so on, to say this is what my baseline is. And if any changes or any anomalies, anything's happening on this, I will go ahead and start giving a proactive, not predictive as such, but at least a proactive alert that, okay, something is going to go wrong or it is about to started going wrong. So that sort of thing basically is where AI is currently getting into most of the places.
Can I give a practical problem?
So basically,
In lending,
so in any digital application, if you look at, right, that you would basically have, let's say, sort of request rate which is coming in, right? Your requests are coming in a specific rate in a specific point of time in the day, right? Now, if you basically have some of these data sets available, you would be able to figure out or predict a upper and a lower bound in terms of what should be my request rate at, let's say, 9 o'clock in every day or a weekday, right? And if it is not, that means either there is a problem on any of your systems which is basically before this, because transactions are not reaching to your application, right? So those sort of anomalies is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I just want to pick a lending problem. In 2020, we built a physical system because we knew Bharat, we knew Agri, and we said, okay, there has to be a responsible person. We'll help him to do this in 15 minutes. This is the Agri finance problem. And we enabled about 1,100 branches, 3,000 offices on the mobile desk, everything. Then RBI figured out that somebody is doing some good job, but we should go completely digital. That was 2022. They gave us 6 months time. And we did it in 3 months. And here we are doing, you would have heard about ULI, Unified Lending Interface of RBI. That is nothing but what we built, one of the fintechs, we are one of the fintechs, we built that. Here I am supposed to take the identity from Aadhaar source that is hosted on premises and use my AI, ML, language, translation, transliteration, name matching, face matching, access to the land record which is coming in the regional language, and then look at the data of the land with the lat longs and establish that he is growing paddy because he is asking for money for the paddy. This is a Kisan credit card problem. They asked us to finish this in 10 minutes. It is not completely real time, it is near real time. But in lending, it is real time for me. If I can do anything in 30 minutes, it's real time.
Yes.
Okay. And they said, you are not meeting the customer, no paperwork. Either he puts, if he's illiterate, he puts his biometric, then he has to, BC has to visit him or he has to visit the branch. Otherwise, he sits under a tree, gives a missed call, gets a link in his own language, takes only 3 steps. 4th, 5th step, you have to deliver the money, hitting the core banking system, sending the money if he's an existing customer of the bank. If he's not existing customer, he has to open the account. We have established and achieved in 3 minutes. The biggest problem we have is a name match in that. 60% failure. What we have done is, fail it and send it to the branch. This guy will go dancing to prove that he is the person. He'll take the money out. And this is very well established. We have done about 1 lakh cases. Very, I mean, it should have been 1 million case, but yeah, Jugaad. So that's the story is, enable digital direct system don't work in India if because of the data. Digitally enabled system, powering the officers of the bank, good enough. BCs of the bank, good enough.
I think if you look at Sahamati, that account aggregator framework, it's very similar to this, where you have FIP, FIUs, which basically are sort of giving consent of my data.
No, that doesn't work. This guy doesn't have capacity to download an app and set up account aggregator. I'm going beyond that.
And where you are working, phygital is the only way to go. There's no way of avoiding it.
Correct.
RBI didn't accept.
I just want to add one last thought on real time, because people are talking about real time. I wanted to talk about before time, right? So what? Yeah. So I think Sir mentioned it, but in practice, the space where it's used the most is fraud and financial crime detection, right? So we want to be preventive. We don't want to be reactive.
Correct.
So that's really where the new AI and data technologies are emerging. So I'll give an example. There is something called behavioral biometrics, where by the pattern of someone's keystrokes on a phone, these softwares are able to tell that he's a fraudster, he or she has stolen the phone and is transacting on someone else's behalf. So to be able to capture that level of data, process it, and act before time. Yeah, correct. That is real time, but you're preventing a transaction from happening, right? So it's so the kind of data infrastructure that needs to kind of evolve to get there is something that all of us need to really
That-
take time to think
that
about.
would be a good outcome for AI, that it is it's tangible prevention of fraud, because once fraud happens, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge.
My just want to add on so what has happened, I come from the cloud era, right? So I'm born 90s, so I've not seen the on-prem side of
Okay.
things. Yeah, so
Pre-cloud
We
and
still have
post-cloud.
on-prem. Don't tell we don't have on-prem. We'll all shout out the word.
no, but things are changing a lot, and what has happened is the democratization of data, right? I mean, what you can do with the data, even business was not able to imagine. Sometimes from the customers that we are working with, we are trying to break the silos between what's happening from the customers to the engineering to the operations, and bringing it all in together to be able to generate insight for businesses. It's not just business, but the way they were consuming the data and want to build analytics and business insights and everything out of it was very difficult in the past. But with AI, for example, semantic and vector and all of that, it makes our life extremely easier for us to just dump data regardless of structured, unstructured, and then deploy it and start building applications and agents and workflows immediately within a couple of days. And that's how easy it has become if you are all on cloud again. I mean, since what we can access. But the idea is that the democratization of the data and the way we can consume it has become extremely accessible in the recent times, and also the cost of so the cost of LLMs are, and again GPUs are really high at this point of time, but with DeepSeek that's also sort of going to dip down, but the fact that the data storage and the cost of data itself has come down slowly, so now you can dump a lot more data and start driving insights with agents sitting on top of it. The business intelligence are extremely easier to drive. But breaking the silos is what will drive everything. Right now, the data is still siloed, the teams are still siloed, the governance is still siloed, the practices are still siloed, principles are still siloed, and I know bigger organizations have more complexity involved, but I think there is no foundational layer for adopting AI in order to build business intelligence out of it. And
Good point.
that's what we are actually completely focusing on with a lot of companies that we are working with. But that's the crux of what we can do with the data. But in the recent past, it's become extremely easier from what I understand.
That's why we have so many jobs actually.
So that's the concern too. That's the concern too. With some of these things, where do the jobs come from?
Yeah, so basically I would say currently in the changing environment with the regulations which are coming up, data governance is very important. Like as Mr. Sir said that he found it that people are reluctant to share data. Now that is also because there is because organizations they are responsible to prove to the regulator that even their vendors are capable of maintaining the confidentiality of the customer's data. Even like when you have outsourced vendors, it is important for the organization to ensure that they have business continuity plans in place. So generally, we have found that many organizations, they try to avoid sharing as much data as possible, and they share it only when it becomes imperative. They have got no option left. So even like I generally find that as you mentioned that even a small data, but that also could be pertaining to some customer, and if it goes out that you have shared a data,
Yes.
so then prove that
That's a
how
challenge.
you have not breached the confidentiality. So taking into all that consideration, I think data governance and data confidentiality is something which regulator
It is.
looks at very minutely.
I think everywhere in the world that's an issue. Yeah.
I'd like to speak on the principles for designing the best solution or choosing the best solution in this AI-driven data generation and all. So the first principle to live by is availability of flexibility in terms of storage as well as compute, right? So any system that you are evaluating, you need to see whether it is flexible or not. The second point is monitoring. Now, with AI, your volume of data as well as the rate of ingestion is also growing, but you don't know whether that data is useful or not. So, like he spoke about whether at 9 a.m. I'm getting that much of traffic or not. So, you need to have real-time monitoring as well plugged into your system when they are powered by AI. Plus, if AI is taking decisions on behalf of you or even recommending you some decision, you need to have some kind of audit mechanism or maker checker in place for this governance aspect.
Interesting. I'm just thinking AI as a maker and then AI as a checker, another AI.
You can have two agents and they
Santa and Banta doing making a check. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. I guess everyone has spoken. Lovely having you all here. And before we end, I'd like to invite Hitachi team to give some concluding remark out of all this discussion.
Okay, so I'll pick up the last thread and build up the entire thing in next 3 to 4 minutes max. Focus was data management, data governance, and especially the real-time capability. Now, these three are broader principles for any kind of AI initiative, data initiative, or any kind of framework. So I would say that what enterprises are following up from a framework perspective is to have a right data architecture and data foundation. This is very important and the first step that we have seen enterprises are doing. Now, when it comes to transactional data, which is actually close to the customer, close to the business, these data go through a very different set of, or rather these different SLAs are applicable there. It should be real time. It should have business continuity. It should have fastest response, technical terms, IOPS, latency, and all of that. So we at Hitachi have systems, they give the assurance of 100% data availability guarantee, 100% data protection from a ransomware attack, 100% assurance on data reduction up to 4:1 on any data that you store from a transaction perspective. So we have those ready products that give you the SLAs as a part of your data foundation for transactional data, for real-time applicability, business continuity, ransomware protection, sustainability from a data reduction standpoint. Now comes the big data part, where you do the data analysis, not the transactions, but data analysis part of it. That's where I think, as one of you said, that the data mesh is important. Data lakes were traditionally there, but those became dumping yard, everything and anything, and it lost the domain or personality of the department. So data mesh concept is coming up, which is ensuring that you have best of both the worlds, centralized data and the domain retention from a reporting or our view perspective. Data democratization, very important, like customer 360-degree view in a bank. Should it be one single customer 360 in a bank, or every department, say a banking, trading, other departments creating their own 360? So data product evolution is also happening to ensure data consistency and the single view is maintained. Certain banks and enterprises are saying, I'm matured, I have a centralized data, I need to ensure better AI. Yes, we do provide a data platform that will ensure that your AI engines are not sitting idle. Today, 70% of the AI deployments have AI engines sitting idle because you don't have the right data at the right speed. So we provide a platform which ensures that the right data feed to the AI systems are done at a very high speed, and we call it as Hitachi Content File Systems. If your bank comes and says, I'm not so matured, my data is lying all over the places, and it is at 10 different locations, I don't have the luxury, money, technology to bring it first centrally and then do the AI. I need to work in a federated and distributed environment. We do have a solution from the day one. You don't need to bring any data anywhere centrally, and you can start getting the benefit of data monetization with data AI operations from the day one. And we have a strategic partnership with a player which can work on the data wherever it is, in whatever shape it is, and feed your AI system to start giving you the AI results on the day one. Lastly, when it comes to compliance, you need a data platform that ensures that all your data sets are retained as per the compliance regulations. The life cycle management for tiering and all that, the data integrity, data purging, and all of that together. And of course, full protection from a ransomware attack, because in one shot you may end up losing the entire data. We do have an object storage S3 enabled kind of platform, which is Hitachi Content Platform, and that, in fact, it's not new. Most of the top banks, if you take top 3-4 banks out of 5 banks, have already built those layers, and they are peacefully dumping the data, and that platform is taking care of data management and governance natively in platform without human intervention as a part of digital banking and digital platform. So Hitachi comes in with all of these solutions that I summarized, and would be happy to do a deep dive discussion with you. And my team is also here, and we can take it forward. You can give the feedback on any of the areas. Our team would come and do the deep dive discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you very much, all of you. Lovely discussion. Thank you also to Team Hitachi Vantara for facilitating this. Thank you, Bangalore, for hosting Banking Frontiers.